In this video, I'm going to tell you what the NAR settlement actually says. I'm going to share a little bit about the history of the current cooperative commission setup that we have right now and how it came into being and why it is the way it is right now. I'm going to address what will actually change for consumers and agents if this proposed settlement goes into effect. I'm going to explain what the changes mean to buyers and sellers going forward. And I'm going to call out some of this misinformation and fake news that the media and social media influencers are trumpeting all over the place and just getting wrong. Then I'm going to identify the winners and losers of this settlement, and I'm going to share how I believe this settlement will impact the residential real estate industry in general going forward. So let's start by talking about what the settlement actually says. All of these people on social media, I promise you, a very small percentage of them read the actual settlement. I have read the actual settlement from beginning to end. I know what's in there. This settlement, the biggest thing it does for the National Association of Realtors, for members of NAR, for local realtor associations, and for any association-owned multiple listing service, and for all brokerages that in 2022 had less than $2 billion of residential real estate transaction volume and are led by a member of NAR, all of those individuals and groups, this settlement, if it goes into effect, will release them from any future liability in those lawsuits. And as part of that, NAR is going to pay $418 million over the next 4 years. NAR denies any wrongdoing in that. All offers of cooperative compensation are going to be removed from the MLS completely. When agents go to the multiple listing service to look up properties for sale, they will not know if a seller and the listing agent are offering compensation for bringing a buyer to that property. They won't, and if they are offering it, they won't know how much it is. It's just not going to be there on the MLS. So NAR also agrees not to create, facilitate, or support any non-MLS mechanism for brokers to make these offers of compensation. Listing agents and sellers can still offer to compensate buyer agents who bring buyers to the sale, but those offers must be conveyed through non-MLS channels. Sellers and their agents can still offer concessions, things like seller paying closing costs for the buyer. They can still offer those types of concessions on the MLS. Agents working with buyers will be required to enter into a written agreement with those buyers before they are allowed to show those buyers any properties at all. MLS participants and subscribers are not allowed to filter out or restrict MLS listings communicated to customers or clients based on the existence or level of compensation offered to the broker assisting the buyer. So what that means in common language is if an agent is gathering listings for their buyer, they are not allowed to remove any listings that are not offering compensation or listings that are offering lower compensation. They're required to show their buyer all listings that are available on the market that meet that buyer's criteria. The last part of what's in this settlement is that all obligations on the MLSs to do these things, they will terminate in 7 years. That's what's actually in the agreement. In order to understand this agreement and what they're claiming, you need to understand buyer brokerage and how that happened, where it came from, why it's in place now. Back in the 1970s, the Carter administration created FHA loans, which were designed to help buyers who didn't have a lot of cash for a down payment still be able to buy a home. They believed in the importance of home ownership and building wealth that way. So they wanted to create a way so that people did not have to save 20 or 30% in order to buy a home. Going into the 80s and the 90s, the way the real estate system was set up back then was that listing agents would get a listing. Other agents who might have a buyer to bring to the table, they were technically a sub-agent of the listing agent. So in reality, they technically both represented the seller in the sale and the buyer was completely unrepresented. Consumer protection groups in the late 80s, early 90s, they said this is not a good thing. We need buyers to be represented. They felt like buyers were getting a worse deal, losing out on money and opportunities because they were not represented in real estate transactions. The powers that be in real estate got together and they came up with what's called the MLS Cooperative Compensation Model. Listing agents would negotiate a commission with the seller, and then they would put that seller's house on the multiple listing service. And then as part of the multiple listing service, that listing agent would offer a portion of that commission that they negotiated with the seller as compensation to the buyer's agent for bringing the buyer to the transaction. The buyers always had the option of working with an agent who got paid by the compensation offered by the listing agent. They could negotiate a fixed fee and pay their agent directly, or they could have the agent negotiate a concession from the seller as part of their offer to cover the commission of that buyer agent. So these combinations of things were how the market was set up. As a result of this cooperative compensation model, buyer's agents became a staple of the real estate industry, and most home buyers, up to 90% according to some accounts, now use buyer's agents when they're purchasing a home. Again, this is the system that is currently in place. Let's talk about the changes in agent practices that will happen if this settlement goes into effect. There's a lot less change than most people realize. Look, commission has always been negotiable, so that's not changing. Offers of compensation, they've been around since the mid-90s. That's not changing. The listing agent negotiates with the seller to come up with that amount, and then the listing agent, if he makes an offer of compensation, figures out what it is, puts it on the MLS. The only thing that's changing there is that that offer will no longer be available on the MLS. Sellers and listing agents who choose to offer compensation to buyer's agents, they're going to have to convey that offer some other way. The only other thing that's going to happen is now when a buyer wants to see a property with an agent, they're going to have a written agreement outlining how that agent will be paid before that agent can show that house to the buyer. And that's it. There's other provisions in there, but those are the two main things that are going to have an impact on the day-to-day life of agents and buyers. Let's talk about what this means for sellers. There's really not a whole lot that's going to change for sellers. Sellers will still negotiate a commission with their listing agent. Sellers in consultation with their agent will decide whether or not there will be an offer of compensation to buyer's agents. And if they do make that offer, they need to decide how much that'll be. And of course, sellers can still choose to try and sell their home as a for sale by owner and not employ an agent at all. And if they sell as a for sale by owner, they can decide only to sell to buyers who are self-represented. Sellers, not a lot's changed. What does this mean for buyers? So with buyers, if you want to be represented, now you can't just call an agent and have them show you a home. You have to sign an agreement with whichever agent is going to tour the homes with you. In instances where buyers are interested in a house that doesn't offer compensation to their agent, they're going to need additional cash to cover that. If you're a buyer and you're paying out of your pocket to your agent, part of your negotiation when you make an offer on a house can be for the seller to pay your agent as part of the transaction. And of course, buyers have always been able to and can still choose to buy a house and be completely unrepresented by an agent. So next, I want to talk about the misinformation, hyperbole that's being promoted in the media and on social media, and the things that they're saying that are just wrong. How many of you in the last week have read, quote, "The standard real estate commission is dead"? Well, here's why that's fake news. There has never been a standard real estate commission. And lots of people right now are wringing their hands and yelling at me and saying there is a standard real estate commission. There's not. And if you look at stats across the country, they're out there, you can go Google them. The median commission and the average commission amounts on closed sales, they vary widely based on market location. So right now you can look anywhere in the country and the average or median commission amount on the average sale, it varies wherever you go. Additionally, offers of compensation for buyer's agents, history shows us that those offers move up and down depending on the market. I'll give you two great examples. During the Great Recession, we had an extreme buyer's market. There were tons and tons and tons of houses for sale and not many buyers looking at them. And I can tell you, I sold real estate during the Great Recession, and there were listings that offered all sorts of compensation, way above, all kinds of bonuses, all kinds of high percentage amounts. That was all because houses were not selling and the free market was in effect, and sellers were saying, I'm going to throw money at you if you will come buy my house. That proves right there that offers of compensation were not set. People were going way above what some people say is the quote unquote standard real estate commission. Now, let's look at the past several years where we've been in an extreme hyper sellers market. If you look at the past several years, the amount of offers of compensation for buyer's agent have been steadily falling as the inventory in the market has gotten lower and lower and lower. The amount is based on the free market, and it's a tool that sellers use to try and sell their house. When sellers think that they can get someone to buy their house without offering a ton of compensation, they generally lower that amount and try to save some money on that end. When sellers think that buyers aren't looking at houses, or there's too many houses competing with them, they often raise that so that buyers will pick out their house and come and buy it. All you got to do is look at the history of what's been going on in the last 20 years, and you can see that the offers of compensation have not been a standard amount. They've varied greatly over the past 30 years. The rules that are changing really have nothing to do with offers of compensation, how much they are, and whether or not you can give them, or whether or not commission can be negotiated. The rules that are changing with this settlement are associated with the multiple listing service and how sellers and their agent are able to communicate those offers of compensation to a buyer's agent. So here's the second bit of fake news that I see out there. Have you heard people saying that realtor commissions are responsible for high home prices? This is an attempt to scapegoat agents for inflation and our country's poor monetary policy. I get it. Houses are super unaffordable right now for a lot of people, and it's very common to blame the people who are responsible for helping to facilitate transactions on them. Here's another fun one. Realtors are about to go the way of travel agents. All right, so surveys consistently show that somewhere between 80 and 95% of all home buyers and sellers prefer to hire an agent to help them through their real estate transaction. It really doesn't appear that that number is going to change dramatically anytime soon. Here's another one, bit of misinformation that I see out there on social media. Sellers are going to stop paying buyers agents. There's two main reasons I believe this is absolutely not true. Number one, the current market is a hyper seller's market. When it shifts back to balanced or a buyer's market, sellers and their agents will realize that offering compensation to buyer's agents is a good way to attract more buyers and get their house sold. Like I just mentioned a minute ago, during the Great Recession, offers of compensation skyrocketed because sellers were trying to compete with other sellers to find the few buyers that were out there. Number two, if there's no offer of compensation and the house is sold to an unrepresented buyer, the legal liability of the listing agent and the home seller, it rises if something goes wrong with the transaction and the buyer pursues litigation. Another bit of misinformation. Buyers are better off buying a home without a realtor. I've been seeing this one a lot on Twitter especially. Let's face it, someone who is not regularly engaged in buying or selling a home is at a distinct disadvantage when negotiating terms with a real estate professional who's immersed in residential real estate on a daily basis. Most people want representation and seek out trusted industry professionals to help them achieve their real estate goals. Now I want to talk about some of the winners and losers in this settlement. The biggest winner, it's the attorneys. They're going to collect tens of millions of dollars from this settlement, maybe more. The biggest loser, in my opinion, the biggest loser is transparency. There's no longer a central place to find out whether or not there's an offer of compensation on a listing and how much that offer might be. Here's the problem with that. How are we going to police discriminatory practices? What if a seller and their agent decide they're going to offer one amount of compensation for one group of people and a different amount for another group of people, and they only communicate it on phone calls, so there's no record of it? That's not transparent anymore. On the MLS, at least it was transparent, and everyone knew. This settlement adds extra layers of complexity that's going to make the real estate process more cumbersome and less transparent. Home sellers are a big winner, but not for the reason that you may think. The way all this is being reported by the media, lots of home sellers who are thinking of listing in April or May are now going to wait longer to put their home on the market to see how all this plays out. That's going to constrict the already limited inventory, and it's going to push prices up as more buyers are entering the market for spring. So sellers are going to make even more money on their houses because this settlement is likely to lower inventory even more. I've got a big loser here, and it's Zillow. Zillow makes the majority of their money by selling home buyer leads to real estate agents. I expect many real estate agents to reduce their buyer lead generation budget while they wait to see what happens with the outcome of this settlement. Another winner, listing agents. No matter how the market responds to this settlement, agents who have listings are insulated from any increases in unrepresented buyers, and they're also insulated from sellers who decide to offer low or no compensation to buyers agents. Loser in the whole settlement are first-time home buyers and buyers who don't have a lot of available cash. This settlement makes things more complicated for buyers who want to be represented. If the listing agent is not offering compensation and the buyer has to come up with or negotiate a commission for their agent, they could be at a bigger disadvantage than they are now when competing against buyers with larger cash reserves. Another loser is buyers agents. When all provisions of the proposed settlement go into effect, buyers agents' jobs immediately become more challenging, more time consuming, and possibly lower paying. Big winner, the National Association of Realtors, NAR members, local realtor associations, association-owned MLSs, and the brokerages that are included in the settlement. And it's a big win for them because the settlement releases them from all further liability in these lawsuits. However, even though NAR is a winner, they are also a loser. Many realtors are extremely unhappy with this settlement, and they're disappointed that the full membership was not more fully consulted before NAR came to terms. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with realtors and NAR in the months and years following the implementation of this settlement. Finally, I am going to conclude the video by talking about how this settlement is going to impact the real estate industry going forward. So in reality, this proposed settlement doesn't really change all that much. One thing that we're going to see is a bunch more paperwork. There's going to be additional disclosures stating that commission rate is not set by law, commissions are fully negotiable, that buyers and agents are working together. There will likely be paperwork eventually for sellers who are offering compensation to be traded back and forth before showings happen. It's just going to be more paperwork, and it's going to be more cumbersome for agents to do the job, and more frustrating for consumers as they have to deal with all that paperwork. Buyers agents, their jobs have gotten a little more difficult. Not impossible, but definitely more difficult. And then in hot sellers markets, sellers and listing agents will likely feel more comfortable offering little or no compensation to buyers agents. Like I said earlier, it's already been happening. I think more people will jump on that bandwagon as they try to maximize the profit on the sale of their house. I think there will be an uptick in the number of unrepresented buyers. I think this settlement can potentially put additional obstacles in the way of buyers who are low on cash and competing in a seller's market. Buying or selling a home is a large, consequential life event for most people. Over the last 30 years, buyers and sellers have proven that they prefer an expert on their side when making this kind of move. I don't expect that sentiment to change very much because of this settlement. People have been trying to disrupt the real estate industry for decades without a whole lot of success. Eventually, it'll probably happen, but those people out there hoping that this settlement is the thing that disrupts real estate, they're likely going to be disappointed. All right, last thing. I want to address all of my fellow agents out there. If you're a consumer or a buyer or seller, or you're not a real estate agent, you can go ahead and turn off the video, move on to other stuff. Go look at some other videos. I have some cool playlists over here. If you are an agent, you need to know this settlement is not the disaster that's being portrayed all over social media. You don't have to wring your hands. That's going to wreck your business. Your business is going to remain basically the same as it is now. A little more paperwork, maybe a little different place that you got to post some information when you have a new listing, but otherwise it's going to be largely the same as it is right now. Especially in the next few months, what you need to do is you need to educate your buyers. You need to educate your sellers. You need to educate everyone that you talk to. You need to be the voice of calm. You need to be the voice saying that the real estate industry remains strong. We are here to help buyers and sellers, that we represent people well, and that we help them make more money on their sale. We help them get a better deal on their purchase. We help protect them from litigation. We help protect them from bad outcomes when they're buying or selling real estate. It is up to us. We are the stewards of our industry, and we can make this transition nice and smooth. We can make this settlement something that actually is a net positive for us, because we can be the voice of calm and reason while the rest of the world's hair is on fire. If you're struggling to understand what this settlement means, or if I can be of assistance in any way, please call, text, or email me. I am happy to help you however I can. You can do it.